Hello, thank you for joining today's webinar on email protection, hosted by Trend Micro, a signatory of the Cybersecurity Tech Accord and a global leader in cybersecurity solutions for consumers, businesses, and governments. Last year, the Tech Accord announced a new partnership with a global forum on cyber expertise to strengthen cyber capacity building through the exchange of best practices. To further our commitment under that umbrella, we launched a series of webinars to help increase the understanding of key cybersecurity topics, such as the one that you'll hear today. Today's webinar, presented by John Clay, Director of Global Threat Communications, will discuss the latest email trends and attack methods that threat actors are using, and will share information about the newest technologies used to detect threats, as well as best practices to reduce your attack surface. We welcome you to share questions using the chat box located on the right side of your screen, as there will be time at the end of the presentation to address questions. And now I will turn the floor over to you, John.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I want to thank the Cybersecurity Tech Accord for having me present today. As mentioned, I'm going to be covering messaging threats. Just to give you a quick background on myself, I've been in the cybersecurity industry for over 22 years, all of which have been with Trend Micro. Currently in my role that I do there is I work with a lot of our research community inside Trend Micro, helping understand the threats that are targeting our customers today, targeting the world today. And we cover lots of different threat vectors out there, but today I want to focus mainly on the messaging security side. So I'll be giving you some examples of what different types of messaging threats, and as was mentioned at the end, I'll give you some ideas on how to limit your exposure to messaging threats, both as a commercial organization or as a consumer. So let's get started. I'm going to cover a couple of different threats here. You can see BEC, which stands for business email compromise, is one of the threats I'll be covering, and then spam and phishing. These are predominantly the biggest threats that we see out there. When we look at our Trend Micro's data, you can see here some breakdowns of the different threats that we saw. And this one breaks down what is when you get a malicious email, what comes with it, what kind of payload is associated with it. And you can see predominantly for us and our customers, it is phishing and URLs, so embedded URLs and phishings. It's 87% of the malicious emails we saw. This information comes from our one of our products that is running in an Office 365 environment. So it's not all threats, all messaging threats that we get as an organization, but you can see if you're an Office 365 user or customer, you'll probably see more embedded URLs or phishing type of emails. You can see 12% come with malicious attachments, or what we call weaponized attachments, and only 1% is no payloads, and that's what I'll talk a little bit later about with business email compromise having no payload. Another one that we looked at is when we look at the total high risk email threats, which ones had were essentially credential phishing emails, and that was about a third, to 28% of the high-risk emails were credential phishing, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well when we get into that section of the presentation. So this just gives you some data, but again, when we look at all the threats targeting our customers in 2018, predominantly the number one threat vector is email and is messaging. And so when you think about where the best place to protect your organization or you as a user, in many cases, the threat is going to come via email. So that's why we wanted to do this session today, because messaging is such an important factor in a lot of organizations' communication strategy, but it is also being used by threat actors predominantly to infect people and organizations out there. So the first area I wanted to highlight is spam and phishing. And so again, this is an interesting area. When you look at a phishing email and some of the attributes that you're looking at, first and foremost, you look at the from field. So the threat actors are going to try to disguise the from field for you, because if you see it, Joe from bad badcybersecurity.com, they will try and fool you by spoofing the from field. So in a lot of cases, they'll try and make it look like it's coming from an employee inside your organization or a legitimate person or a friend of yours. That's first and foremost. So when you look at the from field, just recognize that a lot of times that's not accurate, and threat actors have the ability to spoof or change what that is. The second thing is date and time. So in a lot of cases, when we think about cyber criminals targeting us as an organization or as a person, they may send these emails in different times depending on what they're trying to do. So for example, they may send a lot of their phishing emails in the morning time because they know that an employee is going to come into work and they're going to have a massive amount of emails potentially from overnight when they haven't been working on their email, and they're going to try and get through their email messages quickly. So they may be less likely to look at them very diligently. So they may do it that time. We also see that in a lot of cases, the threat actors do take vacation, or they do take time off on the weekends. So most of the emails are going to be sent during business hours during the week. The third area is when the subject, right? They may put in the subject line may contain some information, or maybe an event or something that's happening in the world today, trying to take advantage of people's curiosity about what's going on in the world, whether it's a big news item or a sporting event or something like that. And then the body of the message, again, depending on what they're trying to do here, they're obviously going to try and keep it to the topic at hand. In this case, you can see here it's more of a financial type of cybercrime we're looking at. So they're using e-service, e-fin, tax information, etc. And then a link or attachment, you can see they will usually as I mentioned earlier, in the majority of the cases with Office 365, we saw a URL. And so they will, again, mask that URL as like you see here with it, just update now. That's not the actual URL. But if you highlight over it, you'll mouse over it, you'll see the actual URL there. But in a lot of cases, that could potentially go to a legitimate website that they have compromised, and then they will redirect you to a malicious web server that serves up a malicious file. Or if it's an attachment, it may be a weaponized attachment, one that they want you to think is one thing, but it's something else. So those are the characteristics of some of the phishing, or attributes of some of the phishing emails. Now I'm going to go into some of the actual phishing and spam messages that we've seen as an organization. These come either from our customers or from honeypots that we've set up around the world. And you can see there's a couple of different categories that I'm going to cover here. In this first section, we're going to talk about sales quotes and RFPs. And this is an interesting one because we didn't see this many years ago. We're starting to see it now, though, because they're targeting people inside your finance, people inside your organizations, or sales reps. How many of you be concerned if a sales rep got an RFP or a sales quote? You think they would be likely to click on the attachment or click on a link if it said that we're, in this case here, we're going to be confirm the submit a quotation, please. So they have an attachment that is supposedly a quotation for you to bid on. So this thing on the right hand side, you can see find attached of samples quotation, send a quotation for 300 pieces each. And it has an attachment called samplesquotation.ace. So again, that's they're looking to fool a sales rep or fool someone inside your organization into responding to these RFPs. On the right-hand side, you can see here there's another one. I'm writing on behalf of my company to propose a long-term collaboration with new companies. So they're trying to get you to, as an organization, to sell to them. On the left-hand side, you see here, they're saying it's a reminder email, last reminder on a PO corrected. So did you receive the quotation? If no quotation reply is sent in the next 2 days, you'll be forced to buy elsewhere. So again, they're trying to make you want to open this because they're giving you some sense of urgency on it. Another thing that we see. Here you see another interesting tact, right? We will not be in the office on the 22nd to 24th of February, 2019. So you can see this was a very recent one. We'll be back in the office the 25th of February, 2019, noted with admin. So, and you can see there's some legitimate organizations that they spoof out there that they're coming from. So that's the kind of, that's quotes and RFPs and things like that. So they're going to try and get you to do that. This is a typical one that we've seen over the years, which are shipping and receiving emails. So in a lot of cases, they will send these to your shipping and receiving personnel. In most cases within a lot of organizations, the shipping and receiving personnel may have a lot of turnover. As such, you may not be training them as quickly as you should be to recognize spam and phishing emails. But you can see here they're using DHL as an example. So they actually get the DHL logos and they put those into the email messages. This one, they're saying there was a mistake in the address. Click on the attachment on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, you can see, please receive your package. Your parcel arrived at the post office. Our courier is unable to deliver it, so download the attached receipt and confirm delivery. Again, trying to get you to get your personnel to click on the attachment, open the attachment. Another one here, this one, appreciate the fact that you use our services. Contact our customer service at phone number, XYZ. Another DHL one here, you can see package bearing your name at our local dispatch facility, find attached to confirm update, etc. Another one for FedEx. So again, they don't just do DHL. You can see it's FedEx Express. And this one, download and review complete details of your order. Again, trying to get you to open an attachment. And then this one I thought was interesting. Your dedicated international specialist. They got a little person here to make it look like it's even more legit, right? So they definitely are creating these emails, socially engineered emails, to make them look real to the recipient, and wanting to get you to open up, either click on the link or do the attachment. Other shipping and receiving emails here, you can see on the left-hand side, there's a damage document, correction, again, using the subject line to try and get you to do something. On the right-hand side, you can see they regularly are using legitimate organizations like this one from Maersk. They're spoofing Maersk. There's, to get you to think it's a real message from this organization. Another area that we see is finance related. This is another big one that we see for your finance organization. A lot of them are going to be PO based. So you can see here, there's a PO inquiry, confirm our PO as attached. On the left, on the right, my colleague is currently on vacation. I'm writing to you regarding our new order. Please confirm the bank details. So again, getting you to think that you're working with somebody new. As such, they might you might be more inclined to open the document. On the left-hand side, we received this payment from your company, email address is contained. We do not know what this payment is for, so they're trying to get you to, do something because they think they're confused. They want you to help them understand what's going on. And again, using this as a zip file, the attachment that you open up, and it's a malicious file. On the right-hand side, you can see again using bank here. This is HSBC Bank. They're using their logo. They're trying to make it you can see the message body is very short and quick. We have been instructed by your customer to make this transfer to you. Attaches a SWIFT copy of the invoice and payment. So again, making it sound very legitimate. Another uses of another bank here, you can see with account information and etc. So that kind of stuff. You might have seen those were all English based, but that's not, there are non-English. You can see here a lot of non-English spam and phishing emails we see around the world, because obviously the world isn't an English speaking only world. So you can see here on the left and right, both of these different types of options. And, again, they're going to use the same types of categories. So it could be finance related, it could be shipping and receiving, could be RFQs, RFPs, etc. All of those are the same. So those are some examples that we have seen, actual emails that we have seen coming into our customers or our honeypots that are out there. Now let's talk a little bit about the payload. So again, this is when either you open an attachment or you click on the link. What are the threats that are going to be downloaded to your system or installed on your system? Ransomware is one that's been used many times over the last several years. Ransomware has been, it's steadying off across the world from based on our numbers, still a problem for a lot of organizations. So some of the different ransomware families that we've seen in these emails above that I shared with you, GAN-CRAB is a big one, the Stop ransomware, Exorist, Guarantee Decrypt, Shade. There's others, but again, the threat actors, depending on what they want to do for in terms of targeting your organization or you as a person, ransomware is still going to be a big one. We still see a lot of ransomware, even though I said the threat has sort of reached a threshold. That still doesn't mean there's not much of it. There's a ton of ransomware still trying to be installed out there. Spyware or intelligence gathering malware like Ferrite, Negasteel, Ursnif. So this is where you would get installed a information seeking type of malware on your system, and it will just gather data. It will gather files, steal the files, grab it and send it up to a command and control server for the threat actor to utilize. So they're just going to try and steal information from you, data from you to use in the potentially sell in the underground. A number of Trojans. Emotet is a banking Trojan. LockyBot, NanoBot, trying to get you, the Trojan installs you, trying to get you into a botnet. Emotet's a big one that we've seen many times over the last several years. That banking Trojan is very prolific, very difficult to get once it gets into your organizations to get rid of, because it's kind of have a worm technology to it where it automatically tries to install on other computers inside your organization. Script malware, so this would be where like a fileless type of threat. So Payloads, Dunahi are two examples that we've seen recently being used in email-based threats. So once it gets on there, it runs scripts on your system. And lastly is the embedded URLs, and those are web threats. And that could, again, this is where you click on the link and it could take you to a legitimate web page that is legit, less likely to be detected by a security vendor, but they will have compromised it for a period of time and redirected you to another server, usually a command and control server, where any of these threats on the left-hand side could be installed on your computer. So those are the typical payloads that you're going to see. When we looked at all of the attachments and spam in 2018, you can see here are the top file types that were spam attachments. So Excel spreadsheets were the top at almost 30%. A executable file, 26%. PDF was 12%. DocX, you can see, 7.65. So you can see there's a lot of Microsoft obviously is being targeted and used, as well as Adobe are probably the biggest ones that are being used as attachments, as weaponized attachments. Again, these are usually going to be malicious files that are using these extensions. All right, I'm going to shift now to business email compromise. This is another threat that has been increasing pretty dramatically. If you look at the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation in the U.S. has done a number of public service announcements over the years. They've been tracking business email compromise since 2013, and you can see the total losses globally is upwards of 12 billion. This was as of July last year. probably a lot more now. You can see one of the challenges we have with business email compromise, it's still relatively small numbers. It's more of a targeted attack than spam and phishing, where it's more of a broad-based type of attack. They may target many users with spam and phishing, whereas business email compromise, they're really going to go after a particular organization that they have targeted. They're going to do their due diligence in understanding that organization, building out profiles about the users, employees inside that organization. And you can see here one of the reasons why the threat actors like this scam is it's on average about $159,000 in losses per scam. So that's per organization that gets hit with a successful business email compromise. Their average loss is around $159,000. That's a huge revenue payout for a threat actor or cyber criminal. Where you think about ransomware, for example, where the typical ransom could be anywhere from $500 to maybe $2,000 per scam. This is a huge payoff for them. And you can see that it continues to increase year over year. We saw another increase from 2017 to 2018. We do predict that we're going to see BEC continue this year in 2019 as an organization. When you think about business email compromise, there's a couple of types of BEC threats. The first and foremost is CEO fraud. This is where you get the cyber criminal poses as a company executive, in a lot of cases the CEO or the CFO, and they will send an email to a finance person inside your organization that is in the finance position and can do wire transfers. They will request a wire transfer of that person to the criminal's account. The next one is a supplier swindle. This is where they try to make you think that they are one of your suppliers. They will potentially compromise an employee email. They could send it to your suppliers, purporting to come from you to your suppliers to try and scam them, or it could be the opposite. They could go to one of your suppliers or make you think they're one of your suppliers and get you to send money to them, thinking that thinking that you are sending money to your supplier. And then account compromise. This is where they are going to compromise an employee account and then use that account to request payments. Whether that, again, could be an internal person or it could be an external supplier of yours. There's really two main techniques when we think about business email compromise. The first is credential grabbing, where they're trying to steal the credentials of email accounts of people inside your organization. The second is an email-only type of threat. I'm going to talk about credential first. This is where, again, you're going to receive an email usually claiming to be your CEO or some executive inside your organization. And again, it's very similar to the phishing emails I mentioned earlier, but very brief, short email messages. Here you can see, please find the attached and treat as urgent. Should you have any difficulty, do not hesitate to contact me. You click on the PDF document here, and it opens up what is purportedly an Excel spreadsheet. So that's a little different. But what happens ultimately is they will pop up a Office 365 in most cases, and we see Office 365, we see Exchange, we see web access, Outlook web access, but an email account login page. So you can see here the Office 365 login page pops up, hoping that the victim here would enter their login credentials, thinking they have to log in to get this document downloaded. That allows the criminal to actually take control of the account of the victim at that point, because they have the credentials, login credentials of the victim. When you look at these phishing sites, they're very convincing. You can see the favicon upper left. The favicon is identical or similar to the real website. So in this case, it's a Office 365 or Microsoft email account or a Microsoft account. The fake URL sometimes has a valid SSL sign, sometimes a legitimate domain. Again, if they've compromised the legitimate domain's web and use that as their URL. The login form looks very similar to the real website, so you can see, they will copy the login page identically if they can. They'll display the user's email address in the form as well to make it all look very, very convincing. And they're doing very good jobs with this. So people, when they see this, victims, they see this, they thought for sure it was the legitimate login account, login page. Another thing they will do once they have compromised that account is they will modify the email rules within that account. So you can see here, they'll inbound, outbound email forwarding, they'll move emails, they'll change privileges, they'll delete emails, for example. Again, once they own the account because they've stolen that person's login credentials, they can pretty much do anything that they want with that email account. And so by modifying a lot of the email rules inside, a lot of the information inside that email account, they can then do things that the user, so they, deleting emails because they don't want the user to see those emails, etc., changing privileges. So this is one of the things that they would do, forwarding email to the bad guy, for example. So if a message arrives in the inbox, it will auto forward to the and delete the email to the bad guy. So the bad guy receives all your email and you get nothing. So that's some of the things that they will do. Here's an example of some email-only examples. So this is when, and this is actually comes from our Trend Micro. Eva Chen is our CEO. So these were business email compromises that were targeting, purporting coming from Eva Chen, our CEO, to an employee inside Trend Micro. And you can see here, very short and simple. There is no attachment. There is no URL. It just says, I changed my bank and I'd like to change my paycheck DD details. Can the change be effective for the current pay date? So that's one. Another one here, I need you to sort something out for me tactfully in the next hour. So let me know when you're available by replying the mail, because I'm engaged right now and can't take calls. Now, one thing you'll notice is Eva Chen and Trend Micro, and most of our emails are going to be first name _ last name at trendmicro.com. You can see here in both of these, though, that is not the email address used here. So if I hit reply to, it would go to j.car or it would go to HP Golden. So those are not, those are the criminals' email accounts. So if I replied to these as an employee, it would go to the criminal. It wouldn't go to Eva Chen. So these are some examples of. And then here's another one that we saw recently. You can see this comes from purportedly a CFO year-end statement. But one of the things I wanted to alert you to is you can see here, I'm not able to take calls most times. So in a lot of cases, they will try to make it urgent. They will try to make sure the employee doesn't recontact them. In this case, they wanted to make sure that they couldn't contact them via phone and to use the email system as a correspondence or a communication channel. Because again, if this person called the CFO, they would know that it's not legitimate. So they want to keep you in an email conversation. In fact, we've seen numerous examples where the criminal and the victim, in this case, are going back and forth multiple times in email conversation because they continue to tell the employee, hey, I can't access my phone now, so just keep it in email. So that's an interesting tact. So be aware if you receive an email message asking you to do something and it does say, hey, I can't, I'm out of range, or I can't be contacted via phone. That's likely then a business email compromise, and you actually should contact them via phone. So I said some of the challenges with the business email compromise is the message looks extremely real. So you can see here 2 examples. One is real and one is actually fraud. They're the exact same message. The word count's the same. The SHA-1 is actually the same. There's no attachment or URL to examine. The context looked the same to most spam filters. So that's a challenge, right? Everything looks very similar. So what is the real difference here? So this is where you start looking into at a little bit more in depth. You can see them. There's things you can look at as a security firm when we look at these messages themselves. Right, there's the mail header, which is the behavior, mail content, the intention of it. When we look at the hacker behavior, you can see here they're using an insecure email provider. So when we look at the mail header, right, the message ID, it comes from an insecure email provider. There's a forged domain. You can see here company instead of company with an A, it's company with an O. So they spoofed that. They actually registered the domain company.com, and they'll use that for a short period of time while they perpetrate these crimes. You can see the reply to is a free email service in a lot of cases. So again, it's not going to go to the true person, but it'll go to a free email service out there that they've registered an account for temporarily while they perform the scam. The intention, again, when you look at the mail content, there's a financial implication. In a lot of cases, I mentioned BEC. It's a financial crime in most cases. There's a call to action. Let me know if you're available. There's an urgency associated with it. So when you think about looking at all of these things and take them into account, you can identify that. You can see here the increase. This was our year over year, 2017 to 2018. You can see the numbers are small. As I mentioned, this is still a very targeted attack approach by the threat actors. They aren't going to do a broad spam-based type of attack here. It's going to be targeted to organizations that they have researched and that they know they could potentially fool with this scam. When we look at two things we look at here also, when we looked at all the business email compromise emails that went in 2018, the most spoofed position. So again, this is the who the email is purporting coming from, right? So they spoof the CEO most of the time, but there's also managing director, president, general manager, chairman, in a lot of cases, and then the most targeted position. This is the employee who they're going to target with this threat. You can see finance manager, director of finance, CFO, financial controller, and accountant were the most ones. But again, these were that actually is a small percentage, as you can see. So it could be targeting anybody. In fact, in our 2019 predictions that Trend Micro did this year, we think BEC is going to actually go 2 levels down and stay away from the C levels and the directors and actually go down to the employees. So those are the two main threats. As I mentioned, it's spam and phishing, and it's business email compromise. There's other threats that are out there. I don't have time today to get into all the different threats, but when you think about messaging threats, there are going to be, everything's going to be fairly similar where there's an intention, there's a reason to do it. They're targeting a person or an organization, and they're going to use either weaponized attachments, they're going to use embedded URLs, or it's going to be no payload. And that no payload is when they're going to try and just get the user to do something that they normally do, but they shouldn't be doing, and getting them to, and fraud, perpetrating fraud on that employee. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how are we detecting these threats these days. And one of the biggest benefits that we've had over the last several years is with machine learning and artificial intelligence. And when we think about it, we've actually at Trend Micro been using machine learning since 2005 for spam. In fact, that was the first iteration of machine learning that we used was for anti-spam, and we still use the same engine today. But you can see here machine learning and using some expert rules, we can actually determine the weight of the message, whether it's good or bad, but using machine learning. And then we use expert rules to determine some of the features, so the behavior and the intention. So when you think about it, the human view, you can see when we actually analyzed those two messages that I shared earlier, the real one and the fake one, a human is actually going to see it's very similar. It's very difficult for a human to actually see that just by looking at the email message that it's real or it's not real. So you can see here when we look at the human view, it's very similar. When we add in expert rules, now you can see where we start seeing the forged sender information. We see the reply to the free email service. All of that looks pretty suspicious, right? Even getting into the email service provider, that's a little bit little wonky when we looked at it as well. The urgency, very difficult to see a difference there. Call to actions, a little bit different. But now we add in the machine learning view of it, and you can see a much bigger gaps here, especially with the forged sender, the reply to free email, the email service provider, and as well as the urgency start showing big differentiations. And that's how we're doing a much better job of now identifying these business email compromise and spam and phishing messages. So you can see here this ability to utilize a number of different techniques inside your security products to identify much better the malicious emails that are being sent to your organization. So I wanted to highlight some business email compromise defense checklists now. This is first and foremost, you need to educate your financial employees. Recommending immediate training about this. Anybody who manages financial transactions should go through the education to help them understand what a business email compromise is. How does it work? What are the messages going to look like? How are they going to be targeted, etc. I would also recommend this to your human resources organization because they are also starting to use this same technique to get employee personal information and tax information. So think about that also for your HR people. Implement two-step verification. Now, this is different when we say two-step verification. If an employee receives an email coming from an executive, they should contact the sender for verification. And again, do it without using email if possible. The FBI actually recommends forwarding it. Instead of using the reply to, hit the forward button and then type in their email address, their legitimate email address. But more better would be to do a verification through a non-email based method. So whether that's using your phone, using a text, use instant message, something where you can verify that it's a legitimate request. Reassess your email security to address zero payloads. Again, as I mentioned earlier, with these zero payloads, in a lot of cases, traditional anti-spam products may have a little difficulty identifying those if they aren't using some of the newer technologies like machine learning or artificial intelligence. Be careful when posting financial and personal information to social media and company websites. Again, this is one of the open source intelligence tools that the threat actors are going to utilize when they do their due diligence and start investigating organizations. They're going to look at your LinkedIn accounts. They're going to look at your social media accounts to help build a socially engineered attack against you. And then if possible, register all internet domains that are slightly different than your actual domain. So this is where you would actually be preempting them from using a spoofed domain if you were to go in and register and use that and get that domain yourselves. And then if defrauded, contact your bank, your local law enforcement, and report to ic3.gov if you're in the US. You can report that to them. So the FBI, as I mentioned, has been tracking this for many, many years, and they actually do a very good job of helping organizations when they get hit with business email compromise. As I mentioned, we mentioned is training. That was the first thing on the last slide. The human firewall approach, this is where 52, we did a survey around this, and 52% of organizations never do this, where they doing some training. You can see here on the right-hand side from Osterman, our senior executives are well trained to recognize CEO, BEC fraud. That's at 34%. We do think these numbers have increased since 2017, just because one of the reasons we're saying they're going to go 2 levels deep with business email compromise is that a lot of the executives have been trained up to recognize this, and a lot of the financial people, so they're moving down. But monthly security video approach, only 51% of organizations, 49% do it, 51 never do it. A phishing test approach, 41% of organizations never do this. If you can start training your people using a phishing tool where you regularly send them phishing emails to test their ability to identify them, that tool can also help with education and training them. So look at there are some free tools out there that are available to you as an organization. There are some paid ones that you can look at as well, but definitely do that. And then the break room approach, 34% of organizations never do this. This is where in the break room you'd have information posted to be diligent in looking at your emails. Don't just willy-nilly click. We call it the click happy user, where they click on everything, whether it's an attachment or URL. As an organization, when you look at your security products, so this is when you need to relook at your security products and how they protect you. You need to build a layered defense model. So this is where when an email message comes in, you want to block all the known threats. And there's a number of technologies that are available to you to do this. Malware signatures, web and URL reputations. So if there's an embedded URL, you can check a reputation database to see if that URL is malicious or not. These are things you can do at the gateway, and you can block a lot of malicious emails by deploying this layer at the gateway. Another one, blocking known threats, again down below, blocking using the malware signatures and the web reputation as well. This is where if it's you're using Exchange, for example, inside your organization, you can deploy it there as well, so it can do internal emails. But then looking at detecting and blocking unknown threats. So this is where you could have exploit detection running, pre-execution machine learning. So if there's an attachment, you can run machine learning on that attachment. In the past, most of the products were only using signature-based scanning. Now you have the ability to do some pre-execution machine learning scanning as well. Sandbox analysis. So if you have a suspicious attachment, you can send it to a sandbox and let the sandbox explode that and run that attachment and see if it is a malicious one or not. And if it is, block it at that point. Machine learning for phishing and BEC. That's where some of the newer technologies in your portfolio are now available to you as an organization. So when you talk to your vendor, your messaging security vendor, see if they are running machine learning. Do they have sandbox capability? Do they have pre-execution machine learning? All of that needs to be deployed today to effectively detect that. And again, a lot of this can be done at the gateway or in the cloud, because the best place to block a threat is off of the endpoint. Don't let it get to your endpoints in the first place. So that's a good thing. Now for consumers, for those consumers who are on the call, a couple of things. Be more vigilant in analyzing your emails. Again, don't just click on everything. Look at them, analyze them a little bit further. If don't be click happy. So if there's an attachment, just don't go and open it. Don't click on the embedded links. Check the sender domain closely. Again, if you're looking at who the sender is, and again, they may spoof who it's from, as you saw with those emails from Eva Chen. So if you see a different email address than you normally recognize from that sender, don't do anything. Delete that email immediately. If you reply to, check the email address closely. Again, if you're replying to an email message from Eva Chen and it's going to a different name or a different address that you don't recognize as Eva Chen's email address, then be hesitant. I would delete that and contact them to see if they had actually sent that email to you. You can hover over links with your mouse to see if they're accurate. So again, this is when you have an embedded URL. Take a look at hover it over with your mouse on your PC. Do the same thing if you're using a mobile device. There's ways to do that to check to see if that looks like a legitimate URL. And if you do have it, you can always then if it's for an organization, you may just want to go straight to their address directly from your browser instead of clicking it from your email. If it sounds too good to be true, use your common sense. It probably is. So if somebody asking, to you to transfer money, or you're going to get money, you're going to get gift cards, those are likely potentially going to be fraudulent. And then finally, use a security suite on your systems and devices that has layers of security, just like I shared earlier on the earlier slide. For commercial organizations, they need to relook at their messaging security. You as a consumer also need to make sure you are using a product that has messaging security built into it, and it has layers of protection and different technologies, some of the newer technologies as well. So that's all I have today. Hopefully this was helpful for you. We are going to record this and it'll be available on demand. So if you have people that you think would be beneficial to listening to this, they'll be able to get access to that. And with that, I'm going to stop the recording or stop the session here, and I'm going to take questions at this point. Let's see if we have questions. I don't see any questions at this point. If you do have any, please use the chat to ask any. Give it just about a couple of more seconds. All right, well, thank you everybody for your time today. I appreciate it. And you guys have a good rest of your day. And with that, we're going to close up the session. Thank you and have a great day. Bye-bye.